Welcome to UNCAGED. Today we're speaking with Irma Shrivastava. Irma has had an incredible career. She is the founder and principal of R² Strategic Solutions, and she's certainly helping a wide variety of companies to figure out their growth strategies and accelerate that lovely revenue generation that we all face. But Irma also sits on a variety of boards. She's very active as a board member. She's on the board of directors of HealthAid. She has formerly been on the board of Employ. She is also on a couple of other boards, or one other board that I know of, which I'm probably going to just blow the name. Desi, what?
Desi Fresh Foods.
Desi Fresh Foods. So
Yeah.
Desi Fresh Foods. Today, we're going to be focusing on something a little bit different. A lot of times we talk about really what someone's doing in their day-to-day, but today we're going to be talking about boards of directors and really how they function, why people do it, where they play, how they work. It's a fascinating topic. A lot of people forget that boards really play an absolutely critical role in our business culture and business environment. And so we'll be talking about some of the work that Irma does in that space. But before we get there, Irma, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Yeah, no, Van, thanks so much. It's so great to be here with you and to talk boards. And because board is really important to think of board service. And so telling you a little bit about me, I am I consider myself a Coke graduate. I spent almost 18 years at the Coca-Cola company, and hence I'm a deeply experienced brand strategist. So I was in the ranks of sales and marketing for most of my career. And then, but I see brand as the core to driving growth for businesses, both in my operating roles throughout my career, first many years at Coca-Cola, then leading marketing and sales for the American Cancer Society, and then as chief marketing officer for Randstad. In those operating roles before I started my consultancy, R² Strategic Solutions, where I work with CEOs, CMOs, and boards and defining their growth strategies. And then also working on a few boards that I know we'll be talking about today.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an incredible background. And wow, talking about Coca-Cola brings me back. I worked on Coke from the advertising side, from the agency side, and it was always such an exciting and stressful moment to head down to Atlanta to pitch an idea to you and your former colleagues. So I remember those experiences very, very well. But Irma, I mean, now you're at a point in your career, you not only have helped companies grow, you're now sitting on boards. So tell me a little bit about the type of board work that you're doing right now.
Yeah, I am on the board of HealthAid. So HealthAid is a kombucha beverage. So in the gut health and wellness space, one of the fastest growing in the category, fantastic business. Recently, we've brought on a new CEO for the business, and she's leading the team and the business to some new heights. It's a very innovative category, very dynamic. So that calls on the board to be involved, not directly day in, day out, but really looking ahead in regards to what risks, what things to be thinking about, to set forward the strategy sight line so that the CEO and the leadership team can focus and have what they need for the day to day.
Well, let me kind of dig a little bit deeper on that, because it's really true. I mean, when boards get together, they get presented not only with just the financials, but really kind of the major topics that the company is facing. What are the key topics and themes that are on your board's mind, or in general, that you're seeing out there right now?
Absolutely. For our board in particular, I would say that financials are core, like you mentioned, but innovation in a highly dynamic, competitive category. What is the business doing? And then that ties in truthfully innovation into the financials, because then as a board, to what degree and what risk or as a company are we willing to take to go after new big bets. So I'd say that's a key area. In addition, not necessarily as much on the specific board, but boards are thinking quite a bit today about cybersecurity, AI, the technology space, the people, the people of their company. So it's not just about shareholders, it's more broadly about stakeholders and those employees and the impact that your company is making to the communities and the broader marketplace and the world that we live in today as well.
Now, I mean, I know there's been, I'd say, I'm not going to say enough focus, but a level of focus, let's say, on the topic related to boards with really kind of the evolution of a board. I mean, there has been a lot of discussion about how do you make them more gender neutral? How do you make them more diverse? What kind of skill sets do you need in a board? Where do you think we are on that pathway right now?
I mean, we've made progress. There's more progress to be made. And I'd say that part of what's driving that need is really because a board's responsibility is to mitigate risk, right? And to be thinking ahead. And in that function, it's not just about shareholders like it used to be possibly in the past. And you'd have a boardroom filled with those who, with great financial smartness, but it's about cybersecurity, it's about AI, it's about technology, it might even be about climate, it's definitely about org development. And you need different kinds of skill sets, you need different people, you need to be able to reflect and understand who truly your customer is, and to have that voice and that perspective in the boardroom. It can be tremendously beneficial to the company, and research over research study keeps bearing that out. And so there is a need. That need is being satisfied. We're seeing the metrics improve, but there's more. There's definitely more space to go, and that's where I think my role is really not just to engage and do good work on the boards that I'm in, but then also to engage with those who may be otherwise thinking about this. CMOs have a seat in the boardroom because there's a voice for understanding the consumer and that consumer strategy, and not getting far removed from that, and how you can be successful in voicing that and or listening for where it may be relevant in the boardroom, I think is also important.
So I'm going to ask kind of a question. It's an interesting one because I feel that boards of companies of different sizes perhaps play slightly different roles, or maybe dramatically different roles.
Yeah.
But, there's this idea that the board is in some ways what you outlined at the beginning, which is almost like a guardian, right? A guardian of the company, making sure that you're helping the company protect itself from itself at times. But at the same time, a lot of companies seem to want their boards to be very action oriented. In fact, some of my experiences on boards have been that the leadership of the company has looked at me to make connections, bring partnerships, even bring customers at times. And so give me a sense of where that balance lies between that active role and that kind of guardianship role.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Bent, and an observation. And I do think that active component probably resides more in the private company board service in order to drive that growth agenda. Where and what might I or other board directors bring forward in regards to networked connections for the company to succeed? That being said, it's important to realize that the company does have a CMO. So it's not for me, even though I have deep experience in marketing, to take on the role as of CMO, but it's to ask questions and to probe and see what that individual may seek to understand and or bring him or her resources that can help facilitate and accelerate the impact the company is looking to make, even for the private company. And then to your point, for the larger companies, and probably more based on if they're public or not, it does become much more of a governance role.
Yeah.
So as you said, guardianship, and that's intentional given the structure of shares and shareholders and the role that the board needs to be playing in order to be a sounding board and a checks and balances in regards to the role of the CEO and the leadership team.
Now that you've sat on boards, Irma, and really I know that you've thought about this space quite a bit, what are the characteristics that you look for when, I mean, I imagine like myself, I had to be on the recruitment or the talent management or the board recruitment role in the board itself. You have to look for other board members. What do you look for when you look for other board members?
Yeah, no, that's I think that if what I think makes a great board director, someone who obviously is smart, has the relevant knowledge related to the business. That doesn't mean they have to be in that exact industry. Well, maybe as you get to smaller private company boards, that's more important, like what we were just talking about. But as you move to larger companies, but I would say it's someone who's engaged. And there's that fit piece. I can't underemphasize that connection. And it's different for board service compared to that of for an operating role when you're looking for a job, possibly. But because these are people that you don't know what you may be facing alongside this team. And so you want to make sure you trust, you believe in them. But there is an element I recently heard, and I believe this idea, the good versus the great board director is someone who's nuanced. So you're asking questions, you're providing insight, but it's very different. And it's actually, I think, far more challenging to create impact without being directional. You're not telling anyone what to do. You're just saying, hey, check this out. Think about this. This has been my experience, or have you heard about this? And those kinds of skills, I think, are extremely important. In addition, another piece I'd add is curiosity. You have to really be curious. You want to learn more about the business and who's doing what and why, and the broader dynamics, not just from what the company shares with you, but because of your own interest and what you're learning and doing on a day in, day out basis, because then you're constantly bringing that perspective into the boardroom or questions that the board is facing as well.
Another kind of twist question for you on boards, because I think that my experiences with boards has been they're kind of like at polar extremes of this topic. I haven't been on a board myself that's been a middle ground on this one.
Okay.
One is that there are a lot of boards that seem everyone seems extremely copacetic and almost in too much, or even you say violent agreement on every topic. And there seems to almost be very little kind of pushback on things. Everyone seems to be kumbaya and happy. And then the other boards where it's literally like World War III in the boardroom, where they're fighting with each other. You can see that there are multiple political agendas at the table. How do you manage kind of the chemistry and culture of a board?
Yeah, that's unfortunate if you've dealt with that warlike boardroom. It's unfortunate, and both sides actually are. You don't want the copacetic. For me, that would frankly not be a good use of my board service. You don't want to be part of a board that's not really engaging. Discomfort is what creates growth. You have to be able to have those tough conversations, but truly constructive conversations. And I think that gets built on true trusting relationships. And that's challenging, right? Because the boards you may be on, you may be meeting remotely, or even if you're meeting in person, it's once a quarter. And with public or with private company boards, those are pretty, you've got a lot to be able to cover during that time. And you're committing to connecting while you're together, but it's also developing those relationships outside of the boardroom and being thoughtful in your perspective and those one-off conversations you may have with other board directors and or the CEO and other chief level leadership from the company. But it is incumbent upon the board directors to create that culture that will both individually, but then collectively be productive. And sometimes that might be led by a board chair, but even if that's not happening, I would say that it's yours to create and call out and step, stage how you would create that and bring that forward.
Yeah, it's a really amazingly layered, dimensionalized discussion and battle every day. And so, Irma, I mean, you clearly have a passion of growing brands. You've shown that in your career. You've helped companies grow their revenue, grow in general. And now you're focused really on boards and helping businesses in that area. What drives your passion for this space?
I think the boards have a lot of responsibility and accountability, and that impact and broad perspective on a business just really excites me. And I like to be able to engage in a brand, a business broadly, while at the same time helping to see that growth and sharing that idea or that perspective with companies. That being said, it is important to take stock of the responsibilities that you're taking on as a board member, and it truly is in service, and remembering that it's not just a presentation or a meeting that you're attending, but there's people that are tied to that company, and the opportunities that you can help to grow that business can help people more and flourish in their own individual situations, depending on how they're associated with that company. And that frankly excites me. And then seeing how those companies are making a difference, both in terms of the product or service that they're bringing forward, is phenomenal.
Yeah, well, we've covered a lot of ground on boards. I'm going to kind of throw one other area at you, because here we are at the end of 2023, going into 2024. And wow, I mean, over the last 5 years, Irma, we have lived through such a level of change in our world. It's hard to kind of forecast. I can imagine if, you were back at one of the big enterprises you were at, sitting there and trying to come up with the forecast, would be like, well, I hope, I hope the world stays calm for a second.
You are so right.
Yeah, but I mean, here you are, working on boards for companies. What does next year look like? And are there going to be any topics in particular that boards are going to be wrestling with, do you think?
I think we're going to continue to see what we've touched on, in terms of the idea of shareholder responsibility, or excuse me, stakeholder responsibility that companies have, and the board's responsibility and accountability around some of the metrics related to social commitments, governance, environmental considerations. Those areas, I think we're going to continue to see boards make movement in that space, and it'll be done from a regulatory perspective, I foresee. So SEC, NASDAQ, they've made some statements, and that push will continue to go further. I think the companies that embrace that are going to see that it works much more smoothly for them, but at the same time, that's a high level of responsibility, that it will involve investment and commitment, and that will change the nature of the people who are in the boardroom, because of what requirements that they're going to need to stand up for.
Well, Irma, I mean, I think any company would be blessed to have you on their board with your perspective, your experience, and not only experience on the executive side and the active side, but also as a board member. Thank you so much for joining us on the UNCAGED Show today. We've been speaking with Irma Shrivastava. We've been actually focused very much on the topic of boards. And really, it's an interesting dynamic. It's not a topic that we've touched on much on the Uncaged Show, to be honest, but there's not a person in the entrepreneurial world, the small business world, and the Fortune 500 world that is not affected. I mean, what happens on the board level is extremely important. And we've been talking about some of the dynamics and some of the areas that boards touch on. Irma, thank you so much. If someone wanted to reach you, where's the best place to find you?
They can check me out on LinkedIn, or directly my website, r2strategy.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, there you have it. Thank you again for being on the show, and we look forward to having you back.
Great. Thanks.